Hi, I'm Tyler with the Econ Tutoring Center, and today we're going to be talking about the reserve requirement ratio, the money multiplier, and the change in the money supply and how they all work together. So in this scenario here, we're given a reserve requirement ratio of 25%, and what that means is that for every dollar that somebody deposits into a bank, the banks have to keep 25 cents of it on hand. So if somebody deposits $100 million, they have to keep $25 million on hand to satisfy deposits, is why they do that. And what that means is that when they hold that money, that's money that's not being loaned out and put into circulation. So that affects the money multiplier, which affects the money supply. So the question here is, what happens when deposits increase by 120 million when there is a reserve requirement of 25%? What happens to the money supply? So the formula for the change in the money supply is the money multiplier times the change in deposits. So in this case, the change in deposits is 120 million, and the formula for the money multiplier is 1 divided by the reserve requirement ratio in any of these forms. So I wrote up here 25% equals 1 over 4 equals 0.25 because sometimes this will be given as a percent, sometimes as a fraction, and sometimes as a decimal. So they all mean the same thing. Just keep an eye out. Don't only look for percents or fractions or something. So anyways, let's see what we can do here. So the change in the money supply equals 1 over the reserve requirement, which in this case is 25%, 1 over 4, anything you want to do. I'm going to do 1 over 4 because it's a fraction. I like fractions better than decimals when you're dealing with fractions. So that times 120 million. So again, this equals, and when you're dividing, when a fraction is on the denominator, what you do is you just flip it over and then multiply it by it. So 1 divided by 1 divided by 4 is equal to 1, the numerator, times the denominator is flipped over. So 1 times 4 over 1, which equals 4. So this change in the money supply equals 4 times 120 million. So the change in the money supply equals 480 million. I know that seems kind of weird because there's only 120 million that's been put into the bank, so how does this 480 million come into play? It's because of the multiplier. So what happens there, the theory is that this money goes into the banks, it gets loaned out, the people who have the loans make money, they spend money somewhere, and just keeps going and going and going and going. And so what it is eventually that 120 million, when it gets loaned out, turns into 480. So in terms of econ problems, that's going to be all you have to do. But in real life, this is probably a little bit exaggerated because this depends on banks loaning out every dollar beyond their reserve requirement, which recently, since like the '08 financial crisis, hasn't really been the case. They've been hesitant to loan out money, and so that's why we're kind of starting to push up the interest rates from near zero. But this is the theoretical highest possible change in the money supply from a deposit of $120 million. But big caveat here that this money supply depends on banks loaning out every single dollar that they can, which is not always the case. Alright, so that is the how the money multiplier and the reserve requirement and changes in deposits work to change the money supply. Hope that made sense. If not, leave a comment below, and thank you.